It's summer holidays here in the UAE, and the kids are home and always hungry. So, here are 4 easy and quick snacks that can keep their little tummies happy. The first one is peanut butter oat bars. I've taken here 150 grams of oats, which is around 1.5 cup, and added to a food processor along with half cup of almonds. You could use any nuts of choice. I just had almonds in my pantry this day and gave it a quick blitz in the food processor. Next, to a bowl, I added 5 tablespoons of peanut butter. I used here homemade peanut butter, but you could use store bought. Just make sure it doesn't have sugar as an ingredient. So then I added 2 to 3 tablespoons of honey, and the recipe actually calls for 1 by 4th cup of milk, but I used homemade paneer here because I had it in my fridge. Also, it adds some protein to the snack, which is an extra boost of goodness. Next, I added 1 teaspoon of vanilla for flavoring and a pinch of salt to balance the sweetness. I mixed this all well and added this back to the food processor. A food processor would make this recipe really easy to make, but if you don't have one, a blender would do as well. Now blitz it till you see this mix becoming clumpy as such, and then transfer it to a parchment lined baking tray and press it down. This would be an easy technique where you just put a parchment paper over it and smooth it out with something flat. Finally, melt some chocolate with a teaspoon of peanut butter till creamy and top it on these bars as a thin and even layer. Now refrigerate this for 30 minutes to 1 hour, and that's it. Our peanut butter oat bars is ready, and now just cut it and enjoy. So the next snack I'm preparing here are granola bars. The main ingredient includes oats and rice puffs. So here to a Dutch oven, I am adding 1 by 4th cup of butter and 1 by 4th cup of honey. Just keep in mind the flame has to be low. Next, add in 1 by 4th cup of brown sugar and mix well till combined. Now when you start seeing bubbles forming, take it from the flame. So at this point, the butter has melted and all of the ingredients has combined well. Now to this, add 1 tablespoon of peanut butter, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon powder, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla essence. I am using vanilla powder here, but you could use vanilla essence or vanilla extract or whatever you have in hand. In fact, I do find that vanilla essence have a much better flavor than this vanilla powder. Now mix everything really well and add a pinch of salt to balance out the sweetness. And then we add 1.5 cup of oats. I'm using here rolled oats. Instant oats would be fine. And then 2 cups of rice puff, or I think it's called puffed rice. Now combine everything really well until the oats and puffed rice is well coated with the butter mixture. Next, I'm adding here seeds. I used pumpkin seeds and flax seeds. I added 2 tablespoons of each. I find this a good source to add seeds into my kids' diet. And now it's the same drill again. You line a parchment paper over a baking tray and add the mixture and then press it down really well. And now this is when I remember that I have forgotten to add chocolate chips at the end before pressing it down. So I'm using here dark chocolate bars. I'm finally chopping it here and adding it back to the mixture and pressing it down for one final time. Ideally, it would be better if you added the chocolate chips right before you press it down the first time. Now refrigerate this for 1 hour and then it can be cut into bars. This can be stored in the refrigerator for 2 weeks if it lasts that long. And a few mistakes that I did here was, one, I forgot to add the chocolate chips right before pressing it down the first time. And second, it would be ideal to use chocolate chips instead of chocolate bars. The next snack recipe would be the easiest and probably kids' favorite, chocolate crispy bars. As the name suggests, this requires a good quantity of chocolate. I'm using here a mix of chocolate chips and chocolate bars and peanut butter. I'm just showing here that this peanut butter contains 100% only roasted peanuts. And finally, rice puffs or puffed rice. These are the only ingredients needed. So to a saucepan, I'm adding 1 tablespoon of coconut oil and then adding the chocolate chips or chocolate bars and allow it to melt completely. I've used here 1 to 1.5 cup of chocolate. Next, I'm adding here 1/3 cup of peanut butter and allow this to melt completely with the chocolate. Once these two ingredients melt together, I will add 2 cups of puffed rice and combine it well. That's it for the recipe, super simple and super delicious. Transfer this to a parchment lined tray and spread it out as even layer and then refrigerate it for 1 hour. This was so yummy and super easy to make that this didn't last long at all. And since editing this video, I was craving this so much that I went ahead and made it because this was so simple. It just took me 5 minutes. The final recipe is carrot apple muffins. This was my first try and you will see how it went. I have prepped here 3 carrots and 3 apples, but I only used 1 carrot and all the 3 of the apples. The recipe calls for apple puree, so if you have store-bought apple puree, that would be easier. I went ahead and made apple puree from scratch, so I de-seeded the apples and blended it. So I thought I could use this small jar, but crazily I went back to the bigger jar. So this day I had a lot of dishes to wash. So I blended 3 apples along with half a squeeze of lemon and 1/4 cup of water, and this did not go easy on me. So the recipe calls for 1 cup shredded carrot and 1 cup apple puree, and 3 apples and 1 carrot was the perfect count for that. Now let's get mixing. For the dry ingredients, 1.5 cup of whole wheat flour, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence. I'm using here vanilla powder. Because I'm using here vanilla powder, I am adding it with the dry ingredients. If you're using vanilla essence, you should add it with the wet ingredients. Now mix all this together and keep it aside. Now we mix up our wet ingredients. For the wet ingredients, I'm cracking 1 egg, 100 grams of softened butter, half cup of honey, and beat it till combined. Then I added the shredded carrot and the apple puree, both of which was 1 cup. I kept the apple puree in the fridge thinking it wouldn't change color, but it did, and the cold apple puree solidified the butter. At this point, I was convinced this recipe was a fail, but still went ahead with no hope at all because I invested so much time. Now I added the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients and combined it well. And now that the batter was ready, I preheated the oven to 180 degrees Celsius and transferred this to muffin trays. If you have an ice cream scooper, go ahead and use it. It would make this process so much easier. I didn't have one at this point, but as I'm giving this voiceover, I'm happy to report that I already bought one because I see myself making this recipe a lot more in the future. And for the rest of the batter, I'm transferring it to a cake mold because I only had one muffin tray and no patience. And to my surprise, despite all the fails, these muffins turned out so good.
It's very good, Mama.
Okay.
Okay.
These could be a good make ahead tiffin recipe too. It's yummy as well as nutritious. So that's all for this video. I hope you give all these recipes a try. If you have stayed this long, thank you from the bottom of my heart and hope you would stick around for more such recipes.